Could you imagine having to compete for an entire day and putting completion, run until 3 in the morning, wake up at 6, and then compete for an entire day again? That is the weekly competition framework for an elite wrestler. As a wrestler myself, I have experienced the rigors and pain associated with wrestling. When the level of wrestling increases, so does the degree of difficulty. I have trained and competed at the Division 1 level, so I know exactly what it takes to be elite. The majority of the population perceives combat sports such as boxing and MMA to be the hardest sports in the world. But the constant rigors of wrestling, both in training and competition, far surpass the degree of difficulty of these sports. In this speech, I will cover how the training, competing, and cutting weight, and how the competition demands are far more difficult than anything an MMA or boxing athlete must endure. To truly understand why wrestling is the most difficult combat sport, we must first look at what happens before competition. Wrestling training places more strain on the body than any other combat sport, or sport in general. Wrestlers train at full intensity almost every single day, fully simulating live competition rather than light sparring. Wrestling is built on constant physical control, pressure, and dominance, meaning there is no room for breaks. Every position requires full strength, balance, and explosive movement. On top of that, wrestlers rarely train while fully recovered. Practices continue even when athletes are sore, injured, exhausted, and cutting weight. Unlike MMA fighters or boxers who limit intense sparring to avoid injury for competition, wrestlers push their bodies relentlessly throughout the season. This constant physical and mental overload makes wrestling training far more demanding than any other combat sport. However, the difficulty of wrestling does not end when practice is over. The demands only increase once competition season begins, especially when weight cutting is involved. Another reason wrestling is the most difficult combat sport, is this constant cycle of cutting weight and competing. College wrestlers compete anywhere from 25 to 40 times per year, often multiple times in a single week. Before every competition, wrestlers must weigh in, sometimes on back-to-back days for tournaments. With an average body fat percentage of around 6%, wrestlers have very little excess weight to lose. This graph shows the average body weight per weight class for college wrestlers. As you can see, it's around 6.5%, and then on the 125 and the heavier weights, it fluctuates a bit. Cutting even 8 to 10 pounds requires extreme dehydration, hunger, and exhaustion, all while still performing at the highest level. While boxers and MMA fighters may cut only a few times per year, wrestlers endure this process weekly, making the physical and mental toll significantly greater. Also, boxing and MMA athletes have to weigh in the day before, while wrestlers weigh in the day of and only have a few hours to recover before they have to compete. Making weight is only the first battle. Once wrestlers step onto the mat, the true physical punishment of a sport begins. In a typical tournament, wrestlers may compete in 4 to 6 matches in a single day, totaling up to about 40 minutes of non-stop, high-intensity effort. Unlike boxing, where fatigue is often concentrated in the arms, wrestling requires total body exertion. Legs, core, grip strength, and cardiovascular endurance are all pushed to their limits. What makes it even more grueling is the lack of recovery time. After completing a full day of competition, wrestlers often must immediately begin cutting weight late into the night to make weight the following morning. They then return to compete all over again the next day. This cycle of competing, cutting weight, and minimum recovery is unmatched in any other combat sport. Although the majority of the population perceives combat sports like boxing and MMA to be the most difficult in the world, the constant rigors of wrestling, both in training and competition, far surpass the degree of difficulty of any of those sports. The intense and energy-deprived training, high-volume competition schedule, and constant cutting weight, paired with physical and mental stress are extreme in the sport of wrestling, far more physically and mentally exhausting compared to sports like boxing and MMA. While those combat sports experience extreme pain in competition, that pain occurs only a few times per year. Wrestlers, on the other hand, endure relentless physical punishment day after day for an entire season, which is exactly why wrestling is the most difficult combat sport. Thank you.